another episode of Throwing It Back with Sean Farrell. And Sean Farrell, God is great all the time. All the time, God is great. Jesus Christ died and he rose again. Let's go ahead and get into it, shall we? Okay. So, okay, I'll go over that first. Yeah. Okay. So, I saw something on Basketball Network. Okay. Um, it was an interview that Red Auerbach did back in the early 2000s or late 90s. Okay. And he said that the 1990s Celtics, they were set up to fail. Okay. That's what Red Auerbach says, that the 1990s Celtics were set up to fail. Okay. So, Red Auerbach said this. He said, the bad break of it all was that the league never gave us a chance to recover from Reggie Lewis. Forget about bias. They never gave us a chance. They never gave us a pick or anything to recover from that. But they could have given us cap money to use for Reggie. They made us carry his salary on our cap for 3 years. Okay. At the time of his passing, Reggie Lewis was on the third year of a $15 million deal he signed in 1990. Okay. And then he was owed $9 million for 93. Okay. And his salary for 1993-94. Okay. So the NBA didn't have a rule to void contracts in the event of a player's death. Okay. So there was a vote by the NBA Board of Governors, okay, for a exemption for the Celtics for Reggie Lewis's death, okay. And so, but the NBA Board of Governors voted against it, okay. They voted against an exception for the Celtics, okay. So, no, the NBA didn't do the Celtics no favors as a result of Reggie Lewis's untimely passing. So the NBA Board of Governors voted against it, and they allocated only like $480,000 to the Celtics to replace Reggie Lewis. Okay. So Red Auerbach called it unfair. The NBA Board of Governors say they had both legal reasons and because other teams likely did not want to do a rival a favor. Okay. So rivals are the Celtics. They didn't want to do them any favors. Okay. So the Celtics were $5 million over the cap. Because of his $15 million salary that Reggie Lewis agreed to when he signed his deal in 1990. And they were $10 million over, and they got that way because teams were allowed to exceed the cap when re-signing their own free agents. Okay. But because they were over the cap when Lewis signed his major contract extension, 1990, okay, the worth of Lewis's cap slot reverted to the final year of his former contract. Okay. Yeah. So, Red Auerbach says the 90s Celtics were set up to fail. Okay. So the question becomes, were the 90s Celtics set up to fail? Okay. I think Red Auerbach is looking at it from a player standpoint, and he's looking at it from a financial standpoint. in some ways too. Okay, that's the way Red Auerbach is looking at it. Okay, but were the '90s Celtics set up to fail? I would say, man, were the '90s Celtics set up to fail? Man, this is a tough one too. I would say no, they weren't. Okay, they weren't set up to fail because they were already they were already declining in the late 80s. Okay, they were already starting to decline in the late 80s. Okay, and the untimely death of Len Bias. Okay, that forced Larry Bird to stick around for a few more years than he wanted to. Okay, um, because Larry Bird said he would have retired in 1989 if Len Bias had still lived. Okay, so um, I would say no, they were not set up to fail. Um, like I said, they were declining. They were already declining in the late 80s. Okay, um, that core of Bird, Parrish, and McHale got older, and of course, Larry Bird sat out most of the 89-90 season. I'm 89-90. 88-89 season. He played only 6 games because of bone spurs in his foot. Okay, and so they still had Reggie Lewis. Okay, they still had Reggie Lewis. So it kind of looked like they were set up for the '90s. Okay, it looked like they were set up for the '90s. Okay, and I've always had this theory. Okay, um, while the core of Bird, McHale, and Parrish were getting older. Okay, I think the thing that the Celtics wanted to do was keep that core together, then surround that core with younger players who can do most of the heavy lifting. Okay, and so that older core could do less of the heavy lifting. Okay, so when they bring in players like Ed Pinckney, um, Joe Klein, D Brown, um, Reggie Lewis, Brian Shaw, um, younger players. Okay, I've always had that theory that the Celtics were going to bring in younger players to surround that older core of players, and the younger players can do the heavy lifting, and the older core can do less of the heavy lifting. Okay, and they can still contribute in a positive way. Okay, so um, but I just think it's unfortunate. Okay, it's unfortunate that Reggie Lewis passed away. It's unfortunate that Len Bias had passed away. Okay, and so when they had Reggie Lewis, it looked like they had Len Bias's replacement. Okay, so it looked like the '90s Celtics were set up for the future. It looked that way. Um, then you bring in another guy like Rick Fox, okay, who arrived in the 1991 draft. Okay, so that young core was put together. But Bird was having back issues, injury issues. McHale was on his last legs. Robert Parrish, he was still going. Okay. Um, but I think it's just untimely and unfortunate that Len Bias had to pass away and Reggie Lewis had to pass away. And so I would say, no, the 90s Celtics were not set up to fail because if you look at it, they had one last hurrah in them, okay? That core of Bird, Mikhail Parrish, and then the younger crop of D. Brown, Reggie Lewis, Brian Shaw. They had one last hurrah in the 1990-91 season, okay? And I made the point earlier that the NBA was like a 5-team league in 1991 in the West, where you had Portland, the Lakers, and the Suns. In the East, you had the Bulls and the Pistons. Well, I would throw the Celtics in there too, because they did get off to a 29-5 start. Okay? Yeah. At one point during the 1990-91 season, they were 29-5. Then injuries got to Bird, injuries got to Mikhail, and they ended up losing it in the second round to the Detroit Pistons. Okay? So yeah, they had one last hurrah in them. And they actually made the playoffs 1990, 91, 92, 93, 1995. So, yeah, I thought they were set up to succeed in the 1990s because they also acquired Sherman Douglas too. I forgot that. Okay. Yeah, they also acquired Sherman Douglas as well. So it looked like they were set up to succeed in the 1990s. It's just that Reggie Lewis's untimely passing set them back. Okay. I think Reggie Lewis's untimely passing set them back. And I don't think they were really able ever to recover from Reggie Lewis's passing. Okay. Because again, it looked like they were set up with a young core of Lewis, Brown, Fox, Sherman Douglas, Ed Pinckney. Okay. So it looked like they were set up. But Reggie Lewis's untimely passing, man. I think that set him back. Yeah, I think that really set them back. And after 1995, they didn't make the playoffs. They didn't make the playoffs for the next 6 years. Okay. So I don't think the 90 Celtics were set up to fail. I just think that Reggie Lewis's untimely passing set them back. Okay. It's unfortunate, but man. Yeah. Okay. So Magic versus Celtics. Pacers versus Magic. 1995 Eastern Conference Finals, okay? So it's game 3, okay? And the Indiana Pacers and the Pacer fans, they had the spinning things. When I say spinning things, the things that you spin, and it makes you look like you are hypnotized, okay? You get hypnotized by looking at the spinners, okay? So the Indiana Pacers bought those to Market Square Arena for game 3, okay? And every time the Magic shot free throws, okay, the fans would spin the spinner or whatnot. And Penny Hardaway started complaining. Penny Hardaway started complaining that the fans who were spinning the spinners were, it was starting to get too distracting, okay? Penny Hardaway started complaining about that, and Larry Brown got upset at that, okay? So that led to a little bit of a confrontation between Horace Grant and Larry Brown. But here it is.
In the playoffs prior to last night, San Antonio and Houston, Game 4 of the Western Conference Finals at NBA Showtime. Will get it going tomorrow, 3 o'clock Eastern, right here on NBC.
And now that the Magic have a small team on the floor with Shaquille O'Neal on the bench, the front line are Horace Grant, Jeff Turner, and Dennis Scott. Larry Brown has taken this opportunity to go with his three-guard lineup with Hayward Workman, Reggie Miller, and Byron Scott.
And apparently, Penny Hardaway complaining about see behind the basket, fans with the spinning insignia. I myself am busy just looking at it. But then again, I came here to do it.
I knew that would bother you. And the squiggly balloons as well are always unnerving.
It's unusual to see where this request would be made. And Larry Brown saying, hey, they can't spin. Why not?
You can just imagine what Larry Brown is saying to referee Billy Oates about all the things that go on in the language. And of course, they have noise here, the vroom, vroom sound of the Indianapolis 500.
You have captured that sound so well.
That was phonetic. But Larry must be saying all of a sudden we're going to put in rules of what signs and what towels you can wave in arenas.
Actually, I don't know how the officials can make an instant judgment on this type of situation. As you say, so much goes on around the NBA unless there is certain criteria that is established. But usually they just let it go.
Well, here's what Penny Hardaway is seeing out of probably the left eye is catching this one over here, and the right eye is seeing this one over here, and he's probably looking at that basket cross-eyed.
Matt, this is breakthrough television on your part. Mr. Basketball has done it again. Well, I don't think that they have stopped the motion at all, and Hardaway is able to hit the free throw. Well, this will be an issue.
Yeah. Yeah, so Penny Hardaway was complaining about the spinning motion the fans had bought. Okay, and you saw the confrontation that led between Larry Brown and Horace Grant. I just find it very, very, very funny. I just find it very, very, very funny that NBA players at the free throw line, some of them know how to deal with the distractions. Okay, some are able to completely ignore the distractions, and some players aren't. Okay, and I just found that very, very funny that Penny Hardaway could not ignore or didn't know how to ignore the distractions of the Indiana Pacer fans. Okay, I just found that funny. All right, that's it. That's all for Throwing It Back with Sean Farrell. I am out of here. May God bless you all. Happy New Year, y'all. Peace.